65. We can do this. They drew a circle, shut me out, a heretic, a rebel, a thing to flout. But love and I had the wit to win. We drew a circle and took them in. Please rise and body our spirit for our opening hymn.
For the beauty of the earth, for the splendor of the skies, for the love which from our birth over and around us lies, source of all, to thee we raise this our hymn of grateful praise. For the joy of ear and eye, for the heart and mind's delight, hill and mystic harmony, linking sense to sound and sight, source of all, to thee we raise this our hymn of grateful praise. For the wonder of each hour, of the day and of the night, hill and vale and tree and flower, sun and moon and stars of light, source of all, to thee we raise this our hymn of grateful praise. For the joy of human care, sister, brother, parent, child, for the kinship we all share, for all gentle thoughts and mild, source of all, to thee we raise this our hymn of grateful praise.
So welcome to the Unitarian Church. Does this sound really echoey to y'all? Yeah. Sorry. So what happened yesterday, my name is Nathan, by the way, I'm your minister. The sound amp something or other decided to stop working, period. It just said, I'm not going to work anymore. I don't know what the exact error code was. And so a volunteer came up and built a second amp and installed it, and that's what we have until we can restore the original one. If you need assisted listening devices, they also are not working, and they are also not working out there. So that's where we are today, but you can hear, and online we're told you can hear really well. So in that sense, we're good. Vic, in terms of online, if you could get the stream back to fully, you have it half darkened. There's a little lever that's half darkened. If you could lever it so it's all the way bright, that would be great. All right, online people, we're glad you're here. We see you. Here's the things for you to know. During middle hour today, in room 5 is art and storytelling in tumultuous times. In room 6 is another part of Intro to Our Faith. And in room 7 is our social justice meeting. The things that are coming up this following Sunday will be the Why I'm a UU service. That's where we invite members of this church to reflect on why they decided to be a part of this service, of this church. It's one of the most sought after services of the year, so I'm glad you can be a part of that. The following week is our annual gospel service. And the following week, the gospel service weekend is also our auction. So if you have not yet donated or been engaged, please mark your calendars. Please donate. The auction is August 2nd. August 3rd is gospel. And then August 10th is in-gathering. And in-gathering, we're also going to do the blessing of the backpacks, and we're going to have a connections fair where all of the organizations in this church will have the opportunity to put out tables, and everyone will get to know everyone else. The other thing, today at 1 o'clock, so after the 11:30 service, is a support group for people who have family members who are trans or somewhere on the gender spectrum. This is not necessarily a group for people who are gender non-binary or trans or something. This is for the families and friends of those folks. All right, let's go ahead and let's switch over to here. Let's do this morning's prayer and reflection. Would you join me? The God that we know when we see hope and kindness and love, that great mystery that has been named for 1,000 different ways for as long as there has been people. Please be with us on this day. And right now, let us hold all of those who are still recovering from flooding, all of those who are still emotionally recovering from flooding. Right now, hold Livingston Parish as they continue to find ways to take away the rights of people to have access to libraries. Please hold those who have been targeted as an excuse to remove these rights. Please hold all in this congregation who are missing someone, all who have a loved one they wish was still with them, have a life they wish that they had, have sobriety they feel slipping away. Whatever it is you are struggling with, please know you are held. Help us to continue to endure the heat of these days. Help us to remember that we can be a beacon for the world, that everyone is worthy of love, and that we can live out that reality as best we can. May you know you are loved. May you know peace. Amen. For stones, first we have an announcement which is pretty heavy on the sad side. So Lang, and then we have a happy announcement too. Lang Baker, who is a longtime member of this church, he has been struggling with cancer. He has been placed in hospice, and he's chosen to go be in hospice with the rest of his family in Minnesota. So today, and Lang has been very present with us online ever since the pandemic. He's been a branches leader. Anyway, so today he is loading in a van, and he's going to ride all the way to Minnesota, where he will live out the rest of his life. So he will, I'm sure, be watching this. I'm sure he will continue to engage with us virtually or online as long as he can. So we're going to send a card to him. And also, if you would place a stone, we have a birth of a child in this, of a family in this church. Brian and Christina St. George have a new child. Lucy St. George was born Monday. Brian is in person. I think the rest of the family is worn out. This ritual we have is open to everybody, visitor and member alike. We invite you to online, type right into the chat what's going on for you. In person, take a stone, let it represent whatever you're carrying today, and place it in the chalice bowl. We now invite those who wish to come forward as we place stones. and we say together, with hope to make this a better world, we light this flame. Its light is the symbol of the power of love.
From all that dwell below the skies, let songs of faith and hope arise. Let peace, goodwill on earth be sung, through every land, by every tongue.
The Babel fish is small, yellow, and leech-like, and probably the oddest thing in the universe. It feeds on brainwave energy received not from its own carrier, but from those around it. It then excretes into the mind of its carrier a telepathic matrix formed by combining the conscious thought frequencies with the nerve signals picked up from the speech centers of the brain. The practical upshot of all this is that if you stick a babblefish in your ear, you can instantly understand anything said to you in any form of language. The speech patterns you actually hear decode the brainwave matrix, which has been fed into your mind by the babblefish. Now, it is such a bizarrely improbable coincidence that anything so mind-bogglingly useful could have evolved purely by chance, and that some thinkers have chosen it to see it as a final and clinching proof of the non-existence of God. The argument goes something like this: I refuse to prove that I exist, says God, for proof denies faith, and without faith I am nothing. But, says man, the babblefish is a dead giveaway, isn't it? It could not have evolved by chance. It proves you exist, and therefore, by your own arguments, you don't. Oh dear, says God, I hadn't thought of that, and promptly vanishes in a puff of logic.
So it was Mardi Gras time about 5 years ago. My then 2-year-old and I were at the Crew of Artemis waiting for it to roll. It's a Friday night parade. It was dark and we were under the streetlights by the planetarium. In between the very distant drum beats of warming up bands, I heard an all too familiar and dreadful sound. It's one of those street preachers with a megaphone. More specifically, like a little headset thing that he was carrying around. He was saying all the typical stuff you would expect about doing anything being an affront to God. I've known these guys since I've been in college. They tend to show up anywhere anyone is having a good time. I was not in a great mood that day. I had to wrangle my kid uphill to go to the bathroom and wrangled back down to try to get ready for this parade. And when he got closer, I did the no eye contact thing where you really don't feel like getting yelled at, so you just kind of look away. And when I looked up, much to my chagrin, the man was sitting right next to me. He handed me a tract and started talking to me about all of the ways that Mardi Gras is the devil or whatever, and I paused him. And I asked him which book of the Bible he was quoting. And he said Corinthians or Romans or something like that, and I stopped him. And I said, I'm sorry, but I don't really trust Paul as much as I do Jesus. Now let me pause here to let those of you who are either raised Unitarian Universalist or some other non-Christian faith who may not be incredibly Bible literate, so we can all get on the same page. In terms of the Bible, there are 4 Gospels. 3 of them, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, were written by someone scholars think probably knew someone who knew Jesus. John came along a little while later, and he's a little more woo-woo than the other 3, but he's still one of the 4 books about the life of Jesus. Following that book is the book of Acts. This is the first-hand account of the adventures of the disciples after Jesus' death. And after that is a bunch of letters. Most of them are either written by Paul or someone who someone who wrote them pretending to be Paul and did it as an attribute to him. Paul never knew Jesus. In his earliest days, Paul persecuted Christians until he had a conversion experience. Many of the disciples did not like him because they saw him as an interloper. Paul even said, "Sure, you may have known Jesus in the flesh, but I knew him in the spirit." Many of Paul's letters are letters to small fledgling churches in different cities. That's why it's Romans, Corinthians, like that. And he's usually responding to the ways that they act foolish and telling them they need to stop acting so foolish so that they can be good churches again. He is the source of many of the terrible things you see on those the yelling preachers' signs. And it is not entirely fair to blame all of that on Paul. Some of the letters weren't written by him. Some of the words are relevant only with an understanding of the context of the time, but for the sake of this Mardi Gras conversation, I said to the man who was quoting Paul that I wanted to hear these same condemnations from Jesus. And he said to me, "You don't find all of the Bible the inerrant word of God?" And I responded, "I think that Jesus' words were more important than Paul's. Do you agree?" The man stopped for a minute. He looked at me, and I swear to you, I am not making this next sentence up. He looked at me and he asked, "Are you a Unitarian?" He then moved on to spread his distaste with joy to someone else in the crowd. I share that little anecdote with you to explain the goal of today's service. Today's sermon topic was won at last year's auction by Adam Voss and Aaron Rogerson. We do this every year to kind of promote the next year's auction, and since the auction is in 2 weeks, this is hey, look, there's a thing that you could possibly win at the auction. So anyway, Adam is our current church president, board president, and Aaron is heading up the stewardship drive with Caitlin Dyer. You will hear a lot from them coming up in August. And I talked with them about what they hoped to hear from their church. One of them said they just wanted to hear an interpreter's guide to religious life for someone who doesn't necessarily believe in God. And let me throw some terms out here to help you clarify. And these are not necessarily Adam or Aaron's beliefs, but they're sort of generalized terms that we lump together, and they're different when we were debating about the title. And the title is An Atheist Babelfish for Interpreting Religious Life. There's a lot in there. We're going to unpack it. So the first is, an atheist is someone who does not believe in God. They've thought about it or experienced it, and their conclusion is there is no God. An agnostic is someone who doesn't know. Now, this term gets a bad rap sometimes because an agnostic might actually know what they believe, but their belief, which is just how we make sense of our experience, has led them to something that cannot be definitive. Then there is a non-theist. This is maybe someone who has religious understandings, but doesn't necessarily ascribe them to the traditional God. It's maybe not as definitive as atheist. All of this is to say the sermon topic requested was some ambiguous combination of those three terms, which is basically someone who doesn't fit the traditional understanding of Christian religion, which we've just titled atheist, but it could be any of those spots. And then it's an interpreter guide for religious life. Now, we thought Babelfish was going to be something all of you knew, because for me, as someone who was raised white and Unitarian Universalist at the turn of the millennium, I assumed that everyone has read The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. But when I presented the topic last week, it turned out that many of you have not. So, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy was written by Douglas Adams. He was a humorous science fiction writer. He was an atheist also, which was an interesting part of this. And one of the concepts in his book is a Babel fish. You heard it in the earlier reading. Essentially, it's an animal you stick in your ear, and it feeds off of other people's words and then interprets them and gives them the words in your language. So it's like what Google Lens or Google Translate does, but in your ear in real time. The concept is you could put something in your ear that would immediately translate other people's religious terms for you. Does that make sense? All right. Most of my childhood as a raised Unitarian Universalist consisted of me ineffectively describing my faith to family, friends, neighbors, classmates, through a series of what I do not believe statements. These ineffective conversations almost always led to some sort of accusation about me being a part of something that was not a religion, or more often than I'm comfortable being told I was going to hell. I did not have the language to say, well, actually, I'm a Universalist, which came out of the belief that there is no hell, so I did not have this Babel fish in my ear to appropriately interpret the questions people were asking that allowed me to accurately describe my faith. Most of my childhood and young adulthood, and frankly, probably until I spent about $40,000 on seminary to be able to have this skill, I lacked the proper interpretation to fully engage in religious conversation. So for today's topic is an exploration of how those of you who may not believe in God, may not follow a Christian theology, how you can have some interpretive tools to help you navigate your time among the non-Unitarian Universalists out in the world. And there is something that I learned that, how do I put this? All right, I'm going to say I didn't make a mistake when I announced something earlier, and say that hearing it twice is going to help you remember better. So we are not having the trans support group after the 11:30 service today. It is next week. See, now you've heard it twice. So it is next Sunday. Thank you, Marlo, who's monitoring the chat, for catching that. So don't come this Sunday, next Sunday. This service, the other thing you should know, your strategic planning team met yesterday for about 5 hours at one of the team members' houses to take all of your feedback that you gave in the cottage meetings. This is like step 2 of 10 to get to the strategic plan. So we had all of these cottage meetings. They took 71 pages of notes, sorted it, figured out what things you said, how often, and then figured out how to put all of that in a framework. It's getting closer to sharing with you, and what they're going to share with you is a draft that you will then say, you got that right, you didn't get that right, I love this, does this make sense? You're going to engage with it, and then they will go back into retreat and then give you another draft later. But anyway, so they did a big part of it yesterday. So today we are sharing our offering with the Gardeer Initiative. They are doing some amazing work in parts of Baton Rouge, and it would be great for this congregation to send them a big old fat check at the end of this month. It's also a 5-Sunday month. So I'll ask you to give very generously as this morning's offering is gratefully given and received.
Humans dream, and in our dreams, we have night experiences, different from our day experiences. We fly, turn into other creatures, walk through walls. We do all kinds of bizarre things. In fact, if we could do during the day what we do most nights in our dreams, we would be having supernatural or miraculous experiences every day. But we don't call them supernatural or miraculous because we easily distinguish our day and night experiences. Day language is the language that describes what is measurably so, what is physically, consensually true. But we also add night language components, that is, interpretive components, because facts in and of themselves are not particularly evocative. They don't inspire. They need to be interpreted to be inspiring, and there's never only one right way to interpret any set of facts. Night language is the realm of poetry, myth, symbol, metaphor, and traditional religious language. It is the language that inspires. It touches the heart, moves the soul, brings us to tears, and calls us to awe. I don't know of a single example of a person's creation story or a people's creation story explaining where we came from, why we're here, where anything is going, and why we're special as a people that doesn't have a blend of day and night elements. Virtually all scriptural and sacred stories worldwide use a blend of day and night elements. They're saying something true, yes. They're saying something often profoundly relevant for how we are to live our lives and thrive and survive and be functional members of society. But to interpret them literally as day language is to trivialize them. This distinction is important because only when we distinguish day and night language will we see the promise of religion fulfilled. Please rise in body or spirit for the next hymn.
This is my song, O God of all the nations, a song of peace for lands afar and mine. This is my home, the country where my heart is. Here are my hopes, my dreams, my holy shrine. But other hearts in other lands are beating with hopes and dreams as true and high as mine. My country's skies are bluer than the ocean, and sunlight beams on clover, leaf, and pine. But other lands have sunlight too, and clover, and skies and everywhere as blue as mine. Oh, hear my song, thou God of all the nations, a song of peace for their land and for mine.
And to fill y'all in, sometimes the machine that we use to make the hymns go freezes. And so that was me. And it's hard when you're up in the treehouse to hear where you're singing. So that was me trying to, once it unfroze, get there. There was a long-serving minister at one of the largest Unitarian Universalist churches in the country, in Tulsa, Oklahoma. His name was John Wolfe, and he used to respond this way when people asked him about his beliefs. And he answered this at the height. There was this huge fight in the 1970s and 80s within Unitarian Universalism between the humanists and the theists. And humanist is different than atheist, but people use them kind of as synonyms for this. But they would always ask whether John Wolfe was a humanist or a theist. And his answer was always, it depended on the congregation. If it was a humanist-leaning congregation, he was a theist. If it was a theistic-leaning congregation, he was a humanist. And while I don't appreciate the feeling you may have about his avoidance of the question, I understand what he was trying to say. I see my job as your minister as to stand at the center of the seesaw. If the church feels like it's leaning a little too gaudy, I try to lean a little more to the less gaudy side. And if this church is getting way too, which way did I describe it? Anyway, if it's going the other way, I try to lean just so the seesaw stays evened out. But my desire to even out the seesaw has nothing to do with my personal beliefs. It has to do with how I serve you as a congregation. My preaching professor told us that the church should never know a minister's theology. Now, I don't agree with that, but that's sort of the sort of full spectrum of how UUs are trained with this. You see, part of the thing is I cannot promise you what my belief is, and more specifically, what my belief will be. I cannot promise you I will preach about my understandings of the existence of God or the absence of God in the future, because I do not know what my beliefs will be in the future. I know what I believe today, but one drunk driver, one maladaptive, fast-growing cell, any of these experiences could fundamentally change my beliefs, which is the way that we make sense of our experiences. So instead, while I cannot promise you fidelity to belief, I can promise you authenticity. I promise to share with you how my life has led me to whatever beliefs that I have. And I think that is our goal as a religious people. Authenticity as a way to explain our beliefs. So that was a long journey, but we're ready to get to the interpretations, because that was the request of this sermon topic. If you have that appropriate Babel fish in your ear, if you have done the work to let it crawl in there and do the interpretation for you, there is a lot of religious life that could be opened up for you, and there are a lot of connections that can be made. So here's a long list of how I tend to interpret things, and the big old long list begins with a big old long list of God concepts. Good? No? Okay, here we go. Let's start with God. Reverend Forrest Church, a very complicated Unitarian Universalist minister, used to say, "Tell me about the God you don't believe in, and I probably don't believe in him either." Don't let other people interpret God for you. When you say, "I do not believe in that," where the that is whatever someone else has described God as, you got off the seesaw. You now double voted for the interpretation of God you don't believe in. You have allowed someone else, someone who uses God as a bludgeon or as a justification for injustice or as a way to exclude people, you validated that interpretation of God. For me, an interventionist God concept does not work. I do not have an understanding of a God that does things. Instead, my interpretation is descriptive. And in the spirit of my theology professor, who always used too many adjectives, he said, I have an adjectival God, or maybe even an adverbial God, which is just fancy words for God as an adjective rather than God as a noun or a verb. I do not think water causes rain to fall from the sky. When I see water falling from the sky, I describe it as rain. So I call it God when I see certain tendencies in life. Not that I think God is causing those tendencies or the resilience from them. Does that make sense? Kind of, okay. So life is hard. The more you love, the longer you love, the more hurt you will be as you lose some of those people. And yet people keep loving. They keep having hope. They keep rebuilding. They keep building towards a more fulfilling life, not just for themselves, but for this world. When I see those tendencies, I describe them as the work of God. Not that God is causing them to happen, but that is the description of that tendency. Michael Dowd, from our earlier reading, who was here a few years ago, he said that God is how we personify reality. So you need to have some sort of personification of the things that are abstract. And so he says we describe that as God. So for him, God is still speaking in that when there is a new scientific discovery, and there's a paper written about that, that is a new, and we try to describe it, that is us personifying God in a new way. And he would say that we use night language to do that, the language of dreams and poetry rather than day language. I've heard some say that God is whatever is larger than us, but within everything. You might think of God as the accumulation of all of the ways humanity has ever tried to understand the divine, from the past all the way into the future. So for this Babel fish, whenever I hear someone mention God, I flip it to whatever it is that's helping us stay engaged in reality and grappling with the mysteries of life. Next is prayer. I don't necessarily see prayer as transactional, not a question of getting certain things if you ask them the right way. I see prayer as a matter of engaging with the world and the divine mystery that transcends us. Unitarians tend to mush together prayer and meditation. I am intentional to keep them separate because meditation is its own thing that is fundamentally different in a lot of ways than prayer. But both of them serve the same purpose. More specifically, they help us to practice engaging and interacting with whatever is beyond us, rather than petitioning or transacting some sort of change. But it's a practice of doing and engaging with the divine so that we can better understand our place in the mystery. Think of it sort of like going to the gym or like an exercise. So when I hear someone mention prayer, my Babelfish interpretation is them engaging with that mystery that holds all of us in some sort of way. Heaven and hell are pretty easy for me because I'm a universalist. There is no hell except for the one that we create on this earth. I'm not telling you you have to believe that. That's just my easy interpretation. And the irony of that man creating hell for me by sitting next to me at Mardi Gras parade, ruining my experience because he feels called to save me from hell, that irony is not lost on me. The feeling that I imagine many queer folks and certainly allies feel walking past those protesters on their way into Pride Fest is, I would imagine, the feeling of walking through hell to get to, and the feeling of walking into Pride Fest where there are colors and joy and dancing and singing. That is how I would understand heaven on this earth. Both were created by us. You want to do some more? Okay. Let's do the afterlife. My interpretation of that is, I don't know. I haven't been there. And so it makes it hard for me to have a belief. Instead, I have guesses and hopes. I hope there is one. There is so much in this life that is designed for pleasure and joy and hope that I have a hard time seeing that end when we die, but I don't know. I do, however, know that we are made up of stardust. We are made up of the same elements that have existed since the beginning of time and will exist long after we're gone. So I engage with the question of afterlife the same way I would with a wave in the ocean. Does the ocean continue to exist after a wave has crashed on the shore? Sure. But the shore is changed and the wave in that form may be lost. Last one we'll do, let's do sin and evil. Good? Easy ones? I think of sin as whatever disconnects us from relationship from each other, disconnects us from love, disconnects us from the divine. And evil is people and systems willfully trying to harm others. It's knowing better and choosing worse. It's knowing you have to do work on yourself or on some sort of system, government, church, industry, whatever, and refusing to do that work. All right, just one more, and then we'll stop. Let's do grace. Grace is an escape from this transactional world. It's a disconnect from this idea that everything that we have earned somehow. And therefore, whatever we don't have, we didn't earn. Grace is the inherent worthiness of every person. It's the idea that you were born and it was good, that you deserve kindness and love and compassion and empathy, and you deserve that no matter what you do. It's just something that comes as a part of this world.
I don't know where prayers go or what they do. Do cats pray while they sleep? Half asleep in the sun? Does the opossum pray as it crosses the street? The sunflowers? The old black oak growing older every year? I know I can walk through the world, along the shore or under the trees, with my mind filled with things of little importance, in full self-attendance, a condition I can't really call being alive. Is a prayer a gift or a petition, or does it matter? The sunflowers blaze, maybe that's their way. Maybe the cats are sound asleep, maybe not. While I was thinking this, I happened to be standing just outside my door with my notebook open, which is the way I begin every morning, when a wren in the privy began to sing. He was positively drenched in enthusiasm. I don't know why, and yet, why not? I wouldn't persuade you from whatever you believe or whatever you don't. That's your business. But I thought of the wren singing, what could this be if it isn't a prayer? So I just listened, my pen in the air.
Let's sing, and you may remain seated. May I be filled with loving kindness. May I be well. May I be filled with loving kindness. May I be well. May I be peaceful and at ease. May I be whole. May you be filled with loving kindness. May you be well. May you be filled with loving kindness. May you be well. May you be peaceful and at ease. May you be whole. May we be filled with loving kindness. May we be well. May we be filled with loving kindness. May we be well. May we be peaceful and at ease. May we be whole.
Wandering around the Albuquerque airport terminal, after leaving my flight had been delayed 4 hours, I heard an announcement. If anyone in the vicinity of gate A4 understands any Arabic, please come to the gate immediately. Well, one pauses these days. Gate A4 was my own gate. I went there. An older woman in full traditional Palestinian embroidered dress, just like my grandma wore, was crumpled to the floor wailing, "Help," said the flight attendant. "Talk to her." "What is her problem?" We told her the flight was going to be late, and she did this. I stooped to put my arm around the woman and spoke hauntingly. "Shadawa, Shabid Uk, Habiti, Stani Shwe, Min Fadlik, Shubit Sewi." The minute she heard any word she knew, however poorly used, she stopped crying. She thought the flight had been canceled entirely. She needed to be in El Paso for major medical treatment the next day. I said, "No, we're fine. You'll get there just later. Who is picking you up? Let's call him." We called her son. I spoke with him in English. I told him I would stay with his mother till we got on the plane and ride next to her. She talked to him. Then we called her other sons, just for the fun of it. Then we called my dad, and he and she spoke for a while in Arabic and found out, of course, they had 10 shared friends. Then I thought, just for the heck of it, why not call some Palestinian poets I know and let them chat with her? This all took up 2 hours. She was laughing a lot by then, telling of her life, patting her knee, answering questions. She had pulled a sack of homemade mamoul cookies, little powdered sugar crumbly mounds stuffed with dates and nuts, from her bag, and was offering them to all the women at the gate. To my amazement, not a single woman declined one. It was like a sacrament. The traveler from Argentina, the mom from California, the lovely woman from Laredo. We were all covered with the same powdered sugar. And smiling. There is no better cookie. And then the airline broke out free apple juice from huge coolers, and 2 little girls from our flight ran around serving it, and they were covered with powdered sugar too. And I noticed my new best friend, by now we were holding hands, had a potted plant poking out of her bag, some medicinal thing, with green furry leaves. Such an old country tradition. Always carry a plant. Always stay rooted to somewhere. And I looked around the gate of late and weary ones And I thought, this is the world I want to live in. The shared world. Not a single person in that gate, once the crying of confusion stopped, seemed apprehensive about any other person. They took the cookies. I wanted to hug all those other women too. This can still happen anywhere. Not everything is lost.
I was at an outdoor wedding more than a decade ago. Right after I finished officiating, a very skeptical grandfather cornered me before I could even make it past the third row of chairs. He had a very accusatory tone and began to question me about my understandings of God and the afterlife. He wanted to know if I believed in God, if I believed we would be reunited in heaven, a whole list of things. I've been in these conversations most of my life, and many times they end poorly, without us having any understanding of each other's beliefs. Before I had done my work, this would have been another point of disconnect. Yes, he was coming at me assertively with an intent to try to convince me of something. But underneath that was him questioning his own beliefs. So many people in this world are raised in such abusive theological environments. Some people have the strength to leave that cycle of abuse, but not everyone. Some people experience the abuse and feel it is their obligation to continue it. Our theological understanding poses an existential threat to many people in this country. If you can be a good person without the threat of hell, if you can stay connected to and love your child for being who they are, whether that's trans or straight or cis or pan or whatever, if you can let go enough to trust something more beautiful in this world, if you are not trapped by this idea that every gender must be enforced, at every rigid social rule must be demanded by you, if you can trust that love that holds us all, then there's a chance for us to exhale. And for someone who is perpetuating theological abuse, you pointing out that you do not need to estrange your child for being who they are means that maybe that still small voice within that other person was right all along. Deep down, it has been telling them their rigid theology and estrangement have caused harm, and now they have to listen to it. We are living in a world of dramatic disconnect. Many Unitarian Universalists will not talk to their family or friends because they believe in political things or religious things that are different. And when we do that disconnect, when we estrange ourselves from the part of the culture we do not understand or that causes us pain, and I'm not asking for you to go somewhere that is unsafe, but if you can safely engage with your family and friends and neighbors, then that allows the world to learn and to grow with each other. So when that man at the wedding was talking to me about my beliefs, he was looking for connection and how to know his grandchildren would be okay. Because I had the interpretation, that little Babel fish in my ear, when he asked me about whether or not I believed in God, I could say yes. He didn't need to know all of my interpretations. But yes, I believe that love holds all of us. When he asked about being reunited in the afterlife, I was able to say yes because I believe we are all interconnected and nothing is lost from our interactions. He was concerned about his grandchildren. He was concerned about his own soul. And my job was to be the loving engagement that helped him be okay. There are good reasons to be a part of many different religions. And we stand to gain a lot by learning to love and engage with people of those other faiths. And I know that this sermon can be one of those where we are the right ones and everyone else is wrong, but I mean it in a different way. It is not about us fixing other people. It's not about us arguing or winning people over. It is about us trusting something larger. It is about us making space for growth and understanding and trusting when people are loved and held they will innately and naturally grow towards truth and what is good, regardless of whether we convince them to do so or not. And that also makes space for us to be wrong, to know that if we are held and loved, we will innately grow towards what is good and what is true. Belief is too often a distraction. Really, what people want to know is what you've experienced. Why is this church or any religious community or concept important to you? Even the most accusatory person is looking for connection. They want to know they are worthy and that they are loved. And by us staying engaged, we can bring us one step closer to that promised land. Let's sing. I invite you to rise if your body lets you.
Make us aware we are a sanctuary, each made holy, loved right through. With thanksgiving, we are a living sanctuary anew. Make us aware we are a sanctuary, each made holy, loved right through. With thanksgiving, we are a living sanctuary anew. We will not rest till the world is won. We will not rest till our work is done, till the world is safe and free from fear. We will not rest till peace is here. Make us aware we are a sanctuary, each made holy, loved right through. With thanksgiving, we are a living sanctuary anew. Vic, can you turn the mic on?
You just needed to know, may you know you are loved. May you know you are cared for. May you be a beacon for all who need it. Amen. Go in peace.